My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while I was making dinner. Another notification from the family group chat. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession, the screen lighting up like a slot machine. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked it up, expecting the usual mundane updates about grocery runs or weekend plans. Instead, I found photos. Dozens of them. Smiling faces at elegantly decorated tables. My sister-in-law posing with champagne glasses. My nephew blowing out birthday candles at what looked like a country club. My chest tightened as I scrolled through image after image of a family reunion I hadn't been invited to. A reunion I'd explicitly been told wasn't happening this year. Then I saw it. My husband's arm around his mother, both grinning at the camera. The timestamp showed the photo was taken 17 minutes ago. The location tag revealed a venue exactly 32 minutes from our house. I texted him, "Why are you there?" The response came almost immediately, "Mom thought it would be better if you didn't come." My hands started shaking. I grabbed my keys anyway. The country club parking lot was full when I arrived. I'd driven there in a daze, my mind cycling between disbelief and growing anger. How long had they planned this? How many people knew I was being deliberately excluded? Had my husband always planned to go without me, or had he been convinced at the last minute? I walked through the main entrance, following the sound of laughter and music to a private banquet hall. The double doors were open, revealing the entire family gathered around decorated tables. Someone had hired a photographer. Someone had ordered a 3-tier cake. Someone had put real thought and money into this event. The event they'd hidden from me. I stepped inside. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Heads turned. My mother-in-law's smile collapsed like a demolished building, her face shifting from joy to something that looked almost like fear. My husband's expression was pure panic. Not relief, not happiness to see me. Panic. Someone near the dessert table muttered, "I thought she wasn't coming." My mother-in-law stepped forward, her voice tight. "Vanessa." She said my name like a warning. The room had gone completely silent except for background music nobody bothered to turn off. My mother-in-law straightened her shoulders, adopting the same expression she wore when disciplining children or dismissing service workers. That practiced blend of authority and disappointment designed to make people feel small. "Vanessa," she repeated, louder this time, ensuring everyone could hear. "I think it would be best if you left. You're making things uncomfortable for the family." I stood there, frozen, waiting for someone, anyone, to object. Waiting for my husband to stand up and defend me. Waiting for one family member to say this was wrong. Nobody moved. My husband stared at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. "This is a private family event," my mother-in-law continued, her voice dripping with false politeness. "And I think it would keep the peace if you respected that and went home." 23 people watched this happen. 23 people who'd eaten at my table, who I'd given gifts to, who I'd helped through crises. Not one spoke up. I turned to leave, my face burning, when an aunt I barely knew touched my elbow. "You really don't know what she's been saying about you, do you?" she whispered. We stood in the hallway outside the banquet room, away from the watching eyes. Aunt Beatrice was my husband's father's sister, someone who attended family events but lived 3 states away, peripheral enough to see dynamics clearly. She glanced back at the doorway nervously before speaking. "Your mother-in-law has been telling everyone you're unstable," she said quietly. "That you're controlling. That you isolate her son from the family. She's been doing it for years, Vanessa. Quietly. Carefully. Turning normal disagreements into horror stories." My stomach dropped. "What kind of stories?" "That you threw a tantrum when they planned a vacation without you. That you refused to let your husband see his family alone. That you criticized her parenting in front of everyone." Beatrice's expression was sympathetic. "None of it sounded like you, but she tells these stories when you're not around, and she's very convincing." I thought back to the vacation incident. I'd simply said I couldn't take time off work. The family visits, I'd encouraged him to go. The parenting comment, I'd never said anything remotely critical. And my husband never corrected her? Beatrice shook her head. "He stays quiet. Lets her talk." I realized then that this exclusion wasn't sudden. It was planned. Cultivated. Years in the making. I walked out of that country club with my head high and my hands steady, but something inside me had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just disrespect. This was erasure. Systematic, deliberate erasure of my presence, my character, my humanity. They'd gathered evidence of my unworthiness through carefully twisted narratives, then used it to justify excluding me from my own family. And my husband had let it happen. I drove home in silence, mind strangely calm. The crying would come later. The anger would surface in waves. But in that moment, I felt only clarity, the kind that comes when illusions finally shatter completely. I'd been fighting for acceptance from people who'd decided years ago I didn't deserve it. That night, I lay in bed alone, my husband still at the reunion. Around 11, I heard his voice through the bedroom wall. He was on the phone in the kitchen, his tone light and relaxed. Then I heard him laugh. Actually laugh. "I know, Mom. I know." "No, she left right away." "Yeah, it went really well after that." I stopped breathing. Listened to him discuss my humiliation like it was a successful negotiation. That's when I knew. He came home just after midnight, trying to be quiet. I was sitting in the living room with the lights off, waiting. When he saw me, he jumped slightly, then tried to smile like everything was normal. "Hey babe. Didn't think you'd still be up." "We need to talk," I said. His smile faltered. He sat down, already defensive. "Look, I know you're upset, but did your mother ask you not to tell me about the reunion?" Silence. The kind that confirms everything. "Answer me, Kyle." He sighed, rubbing his face. "She thought it would be easier this way. That if you didn't know about it until after, there wouldn't be any conflict." "Easier for who?" "For everyone. You know how Mom gets, Vanessa. She has these ideas about how things should be, and if I told you, you would have been upset, and then I'd be caught in the middle. So you chose to lie instead." "I didn't lie," he protested. "I just didn't mention it." "That's lying, Kyle. That's absolutely lying." My voice stayed calm, which seemed to unnerve him more than yelling would have. "And when I showed up, you didn't defend me. You sat there while your mother humiliated me in front of everyone. What was I supposed to do?" I stopped arguing then. Stopped trying to make him understand. Because I finally heard what he wasn't saying, that defending me would have been harder than staying silent. That his comfort mattered more than my dignity. I just listened. And started planning. The next few days, I took inventory. Not of my feelings or our relationship, those were already catalogued and failing. I took inventory of practical things. Legal things. The framework of our shared life that everyone took for granted but nobody truly understood except me. I'd handled everything for 7 years. The mortgage refinancing when interest rates dropped. The insurance policies. The tax filings. The bill payments. The home improvements. The family financial planning spreadsheets I'd created and maintained. I'd been the foundation everyone stood on, and nobody had bothered to notice. The house was in both our names, but I'd handled the paperwork when we bought it. The investment accounts were joint, but I'd set them up. The retirement planning, the estate documents, the insurance beneficiaries, all of it organized and managed by me while Kyle and his family assumed these things just happened automatically. I'd made myself indispensable while being treated as disposable. That Tuesday evening, I made my first private decision. I called a lawyer. Not for revenge, but for information. To understand exactly where I stood and what my options were. The consultation was enlightening. I stopped explaining myself after that. When Kyle's mother called to smooth things over with hollow apologies that blamed my feelings rather than her actions, I was polite but distant. When Kyle suggested I try harder to understand where his mom was coming from, I simply nodded and changed the subject. I stopped chasing approval. Stopped trying to win over people who'd already decided I was the villain. Stopped performing the role of grateful daughter-in-law who should be thankful for whatever crumbs of acceptance they threw my way. The shift was immediate and obvious. My mother-in-law noticed first. Her texts became more frequent, more pointed. Little jabs disguised as concern. Just checking in since you've been so distant lately. Hope everything's okay, you seem different. Kyle mentioned you've been stressed. She was testing boundaries, pushing to see if I'd return to my previous pattern of apologizing and accommodating. When I didn't, she escalated. The passive-aggressive comments became direct criticisms. The backhanded compliments turned into open judgment. She needed me to react, to engage, to give her ammunition for the narrative she'd been building. But she made one critical mistake. She underestimated how observant I'd become. I found the documents on a Sunday afternoon while looking for our property tax records. Kyle had asked me to find them for his accountant, and I'd gone into the file cabinet where we kept important papers. Buried in a folder labeled Family Investments, I discovered paperwork I'd forgotten about. 3 years ago, Kyle's parents had needed someone to co-sign on a commercial property investment. Something about their credit situation making financing difficult. Kyle had been traveling for work, so I'd signed the papers he'd left for me, trusting it was handled correctly. I'd completely forgotten about it until I saw my name on the deed documents. I was listed as a co-owner on a commercial property in downtown Austin worth approximately $1.3 million. Not a co-signer. A co-owner. The property currently leased to 3 businesses generating significant monthly income. Income I'd never seen a penny of. I pulled out my phone and photographed every document. Then I dug deeper, finding more paperwork, more signatures, more evidence of financial entanglements nobody had bothered to explain to me properly. I realized I wasn't just walking away from a marriage. I was walking away from assets I'd legally helped secure but been systematically excluded from benefiting from. Walking away didn't mean walking away empty-handed. The trigger came 2 weeks later. Kyle's cousin was getting married, and there was a pre-wedding family brunch. Kyle mentioned it casually on a Thursday evening, then added, "Mom thinks it might be better if I go alone. You know, keep things simple." I looked up from my book. "She told you I'm not invited?" "She just thinks, given everything, it might be easier." "Did she say why?" He shifted uncomfortably. "She mentioned you've been kind of cold lately, and she doesn't want any tension at a happy event." 3 days later, I got a call from Kyle's brother's wife, someone I'd always gotten along with. She was uncomfortable but felt I should know. "Vanessa, at the brunch, your mother-in-law told everyone you weren't invited because you're emotionally unsafe. She said you'd been acting erratically and she was worried about you disrupting the celebration." The words landed like physical blows. Emotionally unsafe. Erratic. Disruptive. This woman had spent years poisoning my reputation, and my husband had let her. I thanked Kyle's sister-in-law for telling me, then hung up. That's when I decided I was done being silent. I waited until Kyle got home that evening, unusually calm. He could sense something was different. I'd stopped the pattern of emotional reactions he'd come to expect, the hurt feelings he could minimize, the anger he could dismiss as overreaction. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About boundaries. And choices." I sat across from him at the kitchen table, hands folded. "I will no longer attend family functions where I'm disrespected. And I will not remain married to someone who allows that disrespect." He blinked. "Vanessa, you're being dramatic." "No tears this time, Kyle. No yelling. This is simply information. You can choose to address how your mother treats me, set clear boundaries, and actively defend me. Or you can choose your current path. But you can't choose both me and your mother's behavior." "You're giving me an ultimatum?" "I'm giving you clarity." He laughed then. Actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. "Come on. You're not going anywhere. You're upset, I get it, but this is ridiculous." The laugh was the confirmation I needed. He didn't take me seriously. Didn't believe I had the strength or resources to actually leave. Big mistake. The attorney's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. I'd scheduled the appointment for my lunch break, telling Kyle I was meeting a friend. In a way, I was meeting the person I should have consulted months ago. The lawyer, Patricia Moreno, was in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to my situation without judgment, taking notes. "Let me be clear about your position," she said after I'd finished. "You're a co-owner on a commercial property worth over $1 million. You've contributed to mortgage payments, home improvements, and joint investments throughout the marriage. Texas is a community property state, which means I'm entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage." "Exactly. And that property co-ownership gives you legal standing they probably haven't considered. You're not just a spouse they can marginalize. You're a business partner." She walked me through the process. What separation looked like. What divorce would entail. What protections I could put in place immediately. I learned exactly where I stood, what I was entitled to, and how exposed Kyle and his family actually were. The consultation lasted 90 minutes. When I left, I had paperwork, a strategy, and absolute clarity. Kyle had been relying on my ignorance. On my assumption that I was powerless. He was wrong. The confrontation happened at a small family dinner Kyle's parents hosted 2 weeks later. I'd been icily polite for weeks, attending only events I couldn't avoid, staying quiet, observing. My mother-in-law interpreted my silence as defeat, growing bolder in her commentary. That evening, after dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was washing dishes. "I think we should talk," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "About what, Patricia?" "About your attitude lately. About how you're treating this family." She crossed her arms. "Kyle is miserable. You're making him choose between you and us, and that's not fair." "I haven't asked him to choose anything." "Haven't you?" Her mask slipped, revealing the coldness beneath. "You've been distant. Cold. Punishing us because you can't handle honest feedback. The truth is, Vanessa, you were never really family material. Some people just don't fit, no matter how hard they try." The words hung in the air between us. Finally, the truth spoken aloud. I didn't record anything. Didn't threaten anything. I simply let her talk, let her reveal exactly who she was, what she thought of me, and how little she'd ever valued my presence. When she finished, I dried my hands calmly. "Thank you for your honesty, Patricia. It clarifies things considerably." I started separating my finances the next day. Quietly. Systematically. Without drama. I opened a new bank account at a different institution. Started redirecting my paycheck. Transferred money from our joint savings, exactly half, documented meticulously. I secured copies of every important document. Mortgage papers, investment statements, tax returns, the property deed. I consulted with Patricia regularly, following her advice precisely. Creating a paper trail. Establishing independence. Protecting myself legally before making any dramatic moves. Kyle assumed I was cooling off. That my silence meant acceptance rather than preparation. He had no idea I'd already emotionally detached. That I was no longer fighting for the marriage but planning my exit from it. His mother called several times, attempting to make peace with invitations to lunch, suggestions we talk things through, offers to start fresh. I declined politely, giving excuses about work commitments and busy schedules. I wasn't interested in reconciliation. I was interested in freedom. 6 weeks after that family dinner, I'd separated every financial entanglement I could, secured my legal position, and found a new apartment. All while maintaining the appearance of a wife working through marital difficulties. The transformation was invisible from the outside but absolute from within. I was ready. The moment of revelation came at Kyle's grandmother's birthday celebration. I'd agreed to attend because refusing would've raised suspicions. The party was at Patricia's house, and I arrived with Kyle, playing the role of dutiful wife one last time. We were sitting around the dining table when Kyle's uncle started discussing a business expansion opportunity. He mentioned needing additional investors for a new development project. "What about that commercial property downtown?" someone asked. "Doesn't that generate good income?" Patricia smiled proudly. "It does. That's been one of our best investments." Kyle's father nodded. "Smart move, getting that property when we did. The tenants are stable, and the location keeps appreciating. Who's actually on the deed? The uncle asked. Just you two. And Kyle, of course, Patricia said dismissively. Though he's not actively involved in management. Actually, I said quietly, every eye turning to me, I'm on the deed. As a co-owner. The table went silent. Patricia's face drained of color. What? 3 years ago, you needed someone to co-sign. Kyle was traveling, so I signed the paperwork he left me. I'm listed as a co-owner on that property. Kyle's father pulled out his phone, clearly searching for documents. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Patricia stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. That was a formality. Legal ownership isn't a formality, I replied calmly. The implications settled over the table like a toxic cloud. Within 24 hours, everything changed. Patricia called me directly, not Kyle me, asking if we could talk. Her voice had lost all its authoritative edge, replaced by something that almost sounded like panic. I think there's been a misunderstanding about that property situation. No misunderstanding, Patricia. I'm legally listed as a co-owner. I have the deed documents. But that was never meant to be. We thought you understood it was just procedural. I understood that I signed ownership documents. That's all I needed to understand. Suddenly, I was being invited to things again. Included in group chats. Asked for my opinion on family matters. Kyle started leaving notes around the house. Let's talk. I love you. We can work through this. His mother sent flowers with a card, to new beginnings. The apologies surfaced like mushrooms after rain. Hollow, strategic, desperate. Kyle called me overreactive but loved during a conversation with his brother that I overheard through the bathroom door. As if my response to years of mistreatment was just an emotional phase we'd all laugh about later. Each olive branch they extended, I declined. Politely. Firmly. Without explanation. Because I'd learned something crucial, their change wasn't genuine. It was strategic. They didn't value me, they valued what I could take from them. I formally asserted my rights 3 weeks later. Through Patricia Moreno, my attorney. Calm, legal, clean. Nothing dramatic. Just facts presented clearly. I was entitled to my share of the property's equity and income. I was entitled to half of all marital assets. I had legal standing that they'd conveniently forgotten about when excluding me from their family. The letter Patricia sent outlined everything precisely. Property law citations. Community property statutes. Documentation of my ownership. The family couldn't sideline me anymore. I wasn't the disposable daughter-in-law they could erase from photos and exclude from gatherings. I was a legal partner with rights and leverage. Kyle read the letter at the kitchen table, his face going progressively paler. You're really doing this? Yes. You're going to embarrass me. Embarrass my whole family over a property technicality. I looked at him for a long moment. Kyle, you embarrassed yourself the moment you chose silence over loyalty. The moment you let your mother humiliate me while you sat there eating cake. That's not fair. You're taking this too far. I handed him a manila envelope I'd been keeping in my bag. What's this? Separation papers. I've already signed them. His hands shook as he opened the envelope. Vanessa, please. We can fix this. No, I said quietly. We can't. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for 7 years finally happened. Kyle begged me not to leave. Promised things would change. Swore he'd set boundaries with his mother, defend me publicly, make everything right. But I'd heard these promises before. In different forms, different contexts, always dissolving like sugar in water the moment his mother applied pressure. You don't understand what you're throwing away, he said. I understand exactly what I'm walking away from. A marriage where I'm tolerated but not valued. A family that excludes me then plays victim when I respond. A husband who chooses the easier path every single time. I chose you when I married you. Choosing me once isn't enough, Kyle. You have to keep choosing me. Every day. Every time someone disrespects me. Every time your mother tries to erase me. And you never did that. Not once. He tried different tactics: anger, guilt, bargaining, desperation. Told me I was breaking up the family. That I was being vindictive. That I was destroying his relationship with his parents. Your mother destroyed her relationship with me, I replied. You helped. And now you're all discovering that actions have consequences. What about the property? You're just going to take half of everything. I'm taking exactly what I'm legally entitled to. What I should have been included in all along. His expression hardened. My family will fight this. Let them. My attorney is very good. I walked out of our house that evening with 2 suitcases and complete certainty. My mother-in-law tried to rally the family against me. I heard about it through Kyle's sister-in-law, who'd become an unexpected ally. Patricia had called an emergency family meeting, painting me as a gold digger who'd manipulated their son and was now trying to steal family assets. But too many people had seen the truth by then. They'd watched her exclude me, heard her make cruel comments, witnessed her systematic campaign to erase me from family photos and gatherings. Some had even started questioning other relationships she'd damaged over the years with similar tactics. Her influence cracked. Not all at once, but slowly, like ice melting in spring. Kyle's brother openly criticized her behavior. His sister refused to take sides. Even Kyle's father suggested, in a rare moment of honesty, that maybe Patricia had gone too far this time. The family narrative she'd controlled for years was slipping from her grasp. 3 weeks after I moved out, my phone rang with her number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Vanessa. Her voice was different. Smaller. We need to talk. About what, Patricia? About resolving this. Finding a solution that works for everyone. Translation: she wanted to negotiate. To minimize damage. To control the situation she'd created. I'm listening, I said, though I'd already decided my answer. We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory. Patricia arrived looking tired, her usual polished appearance slightly worn. The confidence I'd always associated with her had diminished, replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. Thank you for meeting with me, she said, sitting across from me. Of course. She stirred her coffee unnecessarily, avoiding eye contact. I think we both want what's best for Kyle. Do we? I know things have been difficult, and I accept that I may have contributed to some of the tension. May have contributed. Even now, she couldn't fully admit responsibility. I'm hoping we can find a way to move forward, she continued. To resolve the property situation amicably. Maybe if we all just took a step back and... Patricia, I interrupted gently, I'm not interested in negotiating. Her eyes widened slightly. But surely we can reach some kind of agreement. I'm taking what I'm legally entitled to. My attorney is handling it. Beyond that, I don't owe you or your family anything. You're going to destroy this family. No. You did that when you spent years poisoning them against me. I'm simply choosing to no longer participate in a dynamic that required my diminishment. The role reversal was complete. The woman who'd excluded me was now begging for my cooperation. The woman who'd called me emotionally unsafe was now seeking my help. I didn't gloat. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Patricia tried several more approaches over the following weeks. Guilt. Think about what this is doing to Kyle. Manipulation. The family will never forgive you. Bargaining. What if we gave you a portion without involving lawyers? To each approach, I gave the same answer: no. Kindly. Firmly. Without negotiation. I'm choosing peace over proximity, I told her during our final phone call. I'm choosing to build a life where I'm valued rather than tolerated. And that life doesn't include your family. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Kyle loves you. Kyle loves the version of me that stayed quiet and accepted mistreatment. I'm not that person anymore. After that conversation, she stopped reaching out. The family settled into an uncomfortable acceptance that I was truly gone, that their attempts at reconciliation were failing, that the woman they'd dismissed so easily was no longer seeking their approval. She realized, finally, that she'd lost control permanently. 6 months after I'd left, Kyle filed for divorce. His attorney and mine negotiated the settlement, both sides knowing I had leverage they couldn't easily fight. I got half of everything, including my share of that commercial property, including the equity in our house, including the retirement accounts I'd helped build. Nobody could call me vindictive. I hadn't taken anything that wasn't legally mine. I'd simply stopped accepting less than I deserved. Another family gathering happened 9 months after I left. Kyle's cousin's wedding, the one whose pre-wedding brunch had been the beginning of my public exclusion. This time, I received an invitation. Addressed directly to me, not to Kyle and guest. The card was cream-colored, expensive, with elegant script, "We hope you can join us in celebrating." I held the invitation for a long moment, remembering the person I'd been when this journey started. The woman who would have agonized over whether to attend. Who would have worried about causing tension. Who would have sought permission to exist in spaces that should have been mine by right. I wasn't that woman anymore. I sent a polite decline with a generous gift. No explanation beyond prior commitment. No need to justify or explain my absence. Kyle called afterward. "You could have come. Everyone wanted to see you." Did they? Silence on his end. "I'm glad they're reconsidering their behavior," I said. "But I'm not interested in returning to test whether they've actually changed. I'm building something better." "Are you seeing someone?" "I'm seeing myself clearly for the first time in years." "That's enough." I chose not to attend that wedding. And the next gathering. And all the ones after. Not from spite. Not from lingering hurt. Simply from preference. I preferred my peace. I rebuilt my life one deliberate choice at a time. A new apartment with windows that let in morning light. A job with better boundaries and more respect. Friendships that didn't require constant performance. Routines that centered my needs rather than everyone else's comfort. The silence where chaos used to live felt luxurious. No more walking on eggshells around someone's mother. No more monitoring my words to avoid being misquoted later. No more shrinking myself to fit into spaces designed to exclude me. I took a pottery class. Started running. Read books that had been gathering dust. Reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday afternoon. My attorney called with the news, and I felt nothing but relief. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over the city, and realized I was happy. Not performing happiness for others. Actually, genuinely happy. 3 weeks later, I received a text from Kyle. "Can we talk? I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I made mistakes. Big ones. I should have protected you. I should have chosen you. I was wrong." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I met Kyle one final time at the same coffee shop where I'd met his mother. He looked different, older somehow. Worn down by the consequences of his choices. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. I nodded, waiting. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About our marriage. About how I handled things with my family. About how I handled you." He paused. "You were right. About all of it. I chose the easier path instead of the right one. I let my mother control too much. I should have defended you." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should have." "I'm sorry, Vanessa. Truly sorry. And I'm wondering if there's any chance." "No." The word landed between us like a stone. "I've changed," he insisted. "I've set boundaries with my mother. I've told her she was wrong about you. I've done everything you wanted me to do." "You've done everything you should have done 7 years ago," I corrected gently. "But you didn't do it because you believed it was right. You did it because I left. That's not the same thing. People can change. I believe that. And I hope you have. But that doesn't mean I need to be part of your life to validate that change." I wished him well. Meant it sincerely. Hoped he'd grow into someone who could protect the next person he loved. But I wasn't interested in being his practice run for learning how to be a decent partner. I think about that reunion sometimes, the one I wasn't invited to. The moment I saw those photos in the family group chat. The drive to the country club with shaking hands. Walking into that room full of people who'd decided I didn't belong. It felt like punishment then. Like rejection and humiliation and proof that I was fundamentally unworthy. Now I understand it was the catalyst. The moment that forced me to see clearly what I'd been avoiding for years. That I was living in a family that had never accepted me, married to a man who loved comfort more than courage. Exclusion wasn't the punishment. It was the wake-up call. I didn't crash their reunion to prove anything or seek revenge. I crashed it because I couldn't believe they'd actually excluded me so blatantly. And what I learned there, about their narrative, their cruelty, their systematic erasure of my worth, gave me the clarity I needed to leave. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person they never believed you could be. Strong enough to leave. Secure enough to thrive. Wise enough to know that their failure to value you says everything about them and nothing about your worth. I didn't crash their reunion. I outgrew it. And that made all the difference.